Stephen, I'm super excited to have this conversation today. So, for the listeners, if you've ever been on Facebook and you watch like a live video and you see the hearts and the thumbs up flying across the screen with comments and like someone's doing some like live footage and those like emojis are flying across the screen. Well, Stephen's the guy who makes that possible. So, Stephen, you want to give just like a quick intro to who you are, what you do, what your company is, and then let's just kind of like dive into some of this stuff we've been riffing on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to be here, Brian. My name's Steven, CTO here at PubNub. I've written a message bus that has over 1 billion connected devices on it over the WAN, the wide area network. So guess what? That's like a lot of devices, right? A lot of devices connected on a message bus. Traditional message bus, you probably heard of like RabbitMQ or JMS, or there's a lot of different message buses out there. But the challenge is those things are really good for communicating with servers. But when you have a lot of devices, the problem comes in, how are you going to do that with a single message bus? You can't. You have to do a whole bunch of extra work. And so what we did was write our own proprietary message bus that was intended specifically to connect billions of devices. And we did it. We succeeded.
Nice, man.
Now, yeah, it's really cool. We've got lots of games connected to us, so multiplayer gaming. We make phones ring, which if you didn't know that when your phone rings, that's well, you may have known, you might not know. That's a signal that goes to the device, and we send those signals. We also power door locks and lights through IoT, home automation. If you're familiar with pressing the button to unlock your door with the August lock, that's one of the things we do.
I've done it before. So yeah, it's interesting. So you went right into the technical weeds. So we have like a mix of listeners. So we have like the technical listeners. The podcast is called Cash Flow. So the cash part, the CACHE part, is for the technical listeners, and then the cash flow part, the play on words, is for the business people. It's all tech. Like the guests and the listeners are definitely in the tech sphere, but it's really interesting. Like it like the purpose of this show is to kind of like marry the two, like take like the tech side of building companies and marry that with like the business side of building companies. And we were even just talking like even before we hit record here, we were talking about like all sorts of stuff from like estimating development backlog items to like what it takes to get a product to market, like when you should launch your product, at what stage, how soon should you launch it, and like getting customer feedback. You were talking about I think your experience at Y Combinator. So lot to dive in there, but it's really it's interesting. So like let's just kind of finish off explaining what PubNub does. So you guys power a lot of things. I think you mentioned you've powered like some really, really big social media sites. Can you talk at all about like those sites and what features you power, and get into that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. You may have heard of Clubhouse, which is a communication app. So sort of like a radio. You can start your own radio station essentially, and it's real time, it's live, it's interactive, and all those interactions from the audience. That's the things. That's the kind of experience that we power. We've talked about it in the industry as sort of a virtual space. You can have users all come together in the same room in a shared experience online, and they're able to communicate. They're able to interact with either throwing, the heart emojis all over the place, or, text messages, being able to be joined into a conversation. All those things are signals, right? And you need to power user-to-user communication through these signals. So that's one of the customers that we power. Also Atlassian, if you're familiar with Jira and Confluent, all those updates that occur on the page that let you know that something's changed. That's something that we help. You could actually, even open up the Chrome Dev Console and just see. You can look and see that we help power those experiences.
Yeah, it's so awesome. It's really interesting, and I'm actually interested to talk to you about this a little bit. Like getting back into the tech weeds, like just building tech at scale. It's real easy to build like features pretty quickly with modern frameworks. And they work at like not scale pretty easily. Like you can roll out features pretty quickly. Like I was building something on a Laravel app the other day. I'm like a hack for a coder. I'm not anywhere near like my company Curotech. I wouldn't be hired. I wouldn't make it through the technical interview process. But I was building something and I had this one feature that I got working basically by like refreshing the object every single time the page loads, like basically like running this little bit of logic on the object every time the page loads. And it's like, all right, well, it technically works, but it's not, it's a back end only app. But like if I try to deploy that at scale to like 100,000 users, let alone billions, it would definitely rack up an AWS bill if it didn't crash the entire system. But yeah, talk to me a little bit about that. I'd love to kind of hear like your experience. Like, so you said you have a billion connected devices. Is that like per day? Just at any given time? Like, what does that look like?
Ooh. Yeah. So if you look at terms of concurrency, which is like all at once type deal, we have powered and have the world record for the largest online event that occurred on the internet.
You guys do?
Mm-hmm.
No kidding.
Yeah. So we worked in tandem with Akamai, which is one of the most well-known CDN providers, to power sporting events in Asia, India specifically, cricket. If you're familiar with the game of cricket, IPL, India Premier League, they had an event where they were broadcasting the show, but they also wanted that live interaction experience for their users, and we helped power that. And there was about 25 million concurrent users, all in the same shared space. That is a feat of engineering to be able to achieve something like that, and I'm really excited that we were able to help them provide that experience.
Dude, so I'm sure you've seen Silicon Valley, the HBO series.
I love that. Yeah, it's a great show.
Was it like when you guys were doing that event? Was it like I forget what episode it was, but I think they were like doing the data transfer or something for like the porn company, and they were like compressing all their files, and they're like freaking out, like they're like, oh, there's so much data is flowing through our system right now, and they're like trying to keep it online, and like the servers catching on fire in the garage. And was that like what you guys were like all hands on deck and just like totally like freaking out during that moment?
Before that, yeah, we had previous events where we powered some Super Bowl experiences here in the US. We had the servers were on fire; they were burning, and we were all panicked. We had planned it out too. We all got in the same room, and we had the TV going, and we wanted to make sure that it was successful. But we had some problems that we had to take care of during the event. Even back then. So that experience had led us to be able to be more, relaxed with this large event. Even though it was the largest event ever, we still were able to accomplish our goals.
Yeah, wow. So two questions on that. So first, like what were some of the learnings you had without getting like super specific, but like just high level, what were some of the learnings you had from that first one where you had kind of like that Silicon Valley Guilfoyle experience on trying to keep the servers online?
Yeah, it's a good one. So in terms of, our message bus is written in C. So a lot of our day-to-day operating of that required us to make sure that we were safe with memory and things like that, which is really easy to, have out of memory errors or segmentation faults. So during the Super Bowl event, which happened, I think maybe this is 2012, so it's quite a while ago now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we had some segmentation faults under certain scenarios, and we also had out of memory errors. So we were able to find those bottlenecks in our code and sort of bypass them, at least get us through the event, right, by just launching more servers. But we wanted to make sure that it could operate successfully in the future under similar constraints. But we didn't want to spend all that money on those servers, right? So we found the bugs, we patched the code, and now good to go.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So my second question, the cricket thing in Asia, the 25 million concurrent events, that is that's a huge amount of concurrent users or concurrent events happening on a system, but like I'm actually surprised. I would have expected the largest ever, like the world record for highest number of concurrent events. I would have expected it to be higher for some reason, but like how was that determined? Like is this like a Guinness Book of World Records? Did like someone come in and like look at like what you guys were doing and actually like formally present you an award or something
Oh, that
for
would have been great. Yeah, where's my award? Where we didn't get any award.
Oh shit, man.
I know. What the heck? That should be a thing. I feel like yeah. So in terms of qualification for it, Akamai was the one who came out with the numbers. They're very familiar with these kinds of events and things like that. So if you do search for Akamai IPL, you'll probably find the article.
Interesting.
That, yeah.
It's called Akamai IPO.
IPL, India.
IPL. Okay. Yeah. IPL. Here, let me just punch that in here. We'll put that in the show notes too.
Absolutely.
Akamai IPL.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah, it says with 18.6 million simultaneous. This is Wholestar, India's largest. Okay, that's probably something else. All right, cool. Yeah, I'll dig into that. Nice. So Akamai actually they acquired a local company here, Linode. You might have heard of Linode before. They're based in Philly.
They acquired Linode. I always called it Linode, but
Linode. Yeah, everyone calls it different. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's crazy. So Linode is still on its way. It's still doing a thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Chris Akers was the founder. I don't know if he's still there or if he's like, out, but yeah, they're still there. They're like the building's still there they're actually in the Corn Exchange building. It's an old
Corn Exchange?
an old building in like an old city, Philadelphia. You speak the Corn Exchange. I guess they used to trade corn futures back in the day.
Nice.
Awesome. Man, that's cool. So I want to get back to the question.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking from a business perspective, where it is a lot of fun to sort of imagine a business that you could sit back and it kind of take care of itself. And that's a lot of where the inspiration of, the freemium model and software as a service comes in. Specifically with PubNub, we're an infrastructure company that sells access to our API. So you essentially are leasing we're leasing our debt to you, which is debt of infrastructure, uptime, deliverability, and the code. So that's what you're paying for when you purchase PubNub. And sort of the idea is it automates itself, right? It's all automatic and things like that. But it wasn't automatic even up to this point of a couple of years ago, where we were still running manual EC2 servers. It was all manual, right? We had to say, okay, we need a little more here. We'd look quarterly. We always make sure that we have enough overhead. Since we've moved to Kubernetes, it's a different story. Now it is mostly automated throughout the infrastructure. It spins
just like scaling up and scaling down. You just automate with Kubernetes. Nice.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Big events.
Still on Amazon?
He's still on Amazon, 100% on Amazon. We were looking over the years. We're like, maybe we can do, multi-cloud, right? Maybe do a little bit of Azure, maybe do a little bit of Google, GCP at the same time, because then we'd be able to shift our costs around and things like that. But AWS has been really good with us on savings plan, discounts, and the ability to purchase new hardware that's faster and a little bit cheaper. We're able to maintain a really good business model.
Yeah, I mean, multi-cloud, there's like a ton of companies doing multi-cloud now. It's kind of like the new, like in cloud, it's like the new buzzword to have like multiple instances and different zones and, different cloud providers. And I guess you kind of get rid of that like vendor lock-in fear that everyone, they get concerned about vendor lock-in. So that does seem like it's, important at your scale because, if you, if you kind of get like too married into one platform, I'm sure you're running in different zones. Like you're probably running like East Coast and West Coast and, Europe and Asia and like running different zones. But yeah, it's, I guess it's hard though, because AWS definitely has, maybe GCP and Azure are catching up, but, AWS has the best cloud stack. There's no question about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're seeing the same in terms of like maturity and things like. There's still a lot of challenges when it's just using EC2, their permissions, infrastructure, the IAM policies. I try to make a new IAM policy to have one service be able to talk to another one. It still doesn't work the first time, and then I try it again. Nope, still doesn't work. No permissions. It's really challenging to get that to work, but once it does, you just make sure not to touch it anymore after that. then you're good to go. So they
I'm
could
diving
do.
into Google Cloud Platform for something, and there's like literally almost 2,000 permission rules in their IAM, and it's like, all right, so every single time, like, there's not just like a super user setting where I can just give myself everything. Like, I have to keep going back and just like adding more permissions, like every time I get blocked on something, and it's so stupid. Like, I have the permission to add permissions.
Yeah.
So it's like, what's the point? It doesn't even make any sense to me.
Yeah, it's they need to provide security in ways and access control, and it could be so much simpler. I feel they could have made that a lot easier to manage. So maybe that's something that the industry can innovate in, or there's a startup idea there. Sort of just, even though the complex interface is over here, you can provide a like really simple one, and it deals with all the complex stuff in the background. That would be really nice.
Yeah, no kidding.
Nice.
I want to take a quick break from the episode and say, if you're enjoying this content, the best way you can say thank you is to subscribe. So if you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. And if you're on one of the podcast platforms, hit the subscribe button there as well. And also share it out to your friends and colleagues. If you find this content useful and you think other people will enjoy it as well, please send it out. And back to the episode.
So do you have any UI in your product, or is it just all like web services?
Yeah, so our primary product is an API, and we've launched a new service called PubNub Insights that allows you to track and visualize where your users are, how much messages they're sending and receiving, the largest consumers, their power users, things like that, is now available in our dashboard.
Nice. Yeah. So let's like change gears a little bit. So we'll go all the way back to founding the company. So we were talking earlier on. We were getting into like this concept of finding product market fit. How much time you spend on building a product before you release it, and like what you actually give to customers in the early days. Because you made the point. I love the way you phrased it. It was like, if you spend a year building a product and then you launch it, you still have 0 customers when you launch it. So it's better to get it out fast and get customers and let the customers guide development and also help fund it. So what were those early days? Because you were one of the founders. So what were those like early days like for you guys? And also, where did the idea even come from? And then how did you like pivot to get to a fit in the market that made sense?
Yeah. So the story started like, why did we need a PubNub? Why did we need devices to communicate? Back then, there were no push notifications even. Like, that didn't even exist. There were smartphones.
What year is this?
2009-ish, right? That was like right the year before push notifications became a thing, right? So there was like, no way to communicate with the device, no like standardization. When we just wanted to be able to provide an experience that allowed you to track a dot on the map, right? As maybe a taxi's picking you up, something simple like that, or having multi-user collaboration on a page. And that was really hard. You could do it. It was really easy to do in a room, right? You can have devices connect over your Wi-Fi or your LAN and communicate over a socket, but then you'd run into permissioning issues depending on what, target platform you're on, what the app is doing, or what the web browser is doing. There was no sort of uniform communication across all that. So we're like, why don't we make it super duper easy and provide an API? And so we did. And then immediately launched, right? I think it was about a 2-week cycle, right? That's about as much as you ever need to do, is 2 weeks of development. If you're going beyond that, you're starting to get into the, whoops, we're making a mistake phase. Get out there as quickly as possible. So we launched. We received multiple customers, and they started paying us immediately, which was surprising. And so we had a game company that launched using our service to be able to have users play a game together, but also chat about their game experience.
So you built the chat part.
They built the chat part. They had multiplayer, and it worked. And even though, it was essentially an MVP at that point, right? It still provided what the customer needed. And we were able to work with them, see what they're scaling up to. We ultimately re-architected, rewrote the message bus in C, made it globally distributed like a CDN. But all that stuff came after, right? And so it's super critical, even when you're, in Y Combinator, or you're just building a startup launch immediately. If you don't, you're essentially giving yourself 0% success, because every day that you're not launched, you don't have any opportunity to get feedback from customers. You don't have any opportunity to actually acquire customers to start paying. So you're missing out on all that opportunity. And you might need to pivot anyway, right? It might not be good enough. So if you build this wonderful thing over a year, it doesn't matter because you have to throw away half of it. So that's just launch as soon as possible. Before we jump to something else, this is the same thing even within an existing big business. When you're launching a new product, you could spend 1 year, 2 years on a product, and the product could maybe most likely fail, right? So instead of building this wonderful architecture and plan and all these tests and everything like that, don't just get to market as quickly as possible. Start getting customers' feedback, and then, because guess what? Day one, you'll have 0 customers, right? Launch day 1, 0 customers. Great. So now you've launched. You can have some other team members work on getting customer feedback, attracting customers, getting people on board, while you continue to build on the rest of what your vision was. So just launch. That's the takeaway. Launch early.
So how long did you say it took you guys to launch from like ideation to like actually like selling it to customers?
Oh, 2 weeks.
2 weeks. That's incredible, man. So I've seen this so many times. Like, I have a development firm. We're like 80 people or so. And we do like agency work for clients, like some startups. Mostly it's like enterprise and growth stage SaaS. But I can't tell you how many times people have come to us and they're like, oh yeah, we have this huge like vision. We know there's a market. Like we're going to, we want to like spend, months or years building this thing. And, it just like, instead of getting to market quickly, 2 weeks is like insanely fast. That's the coolest thing I've ever heard. Like I've done my own, SaaS businesses that typically like, if I'm like selling within 2 months or 3 months, I'm pretty happy with that. Like, kind of getting the first phase of the product out in 2 to 3 months, is a good target for me. But 2 weeks, that's insane. Like, what did you even build in 2 weeks?
Yeah, a server that was able to connect clients and allow them to chat or communicate.
Yeah. So what was it like? You have the API.
Yeah.
And you have, I guess, like a client layer that you install on the device. Like maybe you can bundle it into your application or something. And then, so it's like, some sort of library that, like, let's say it's like, you have a Java library for Android and you have like a C# library, or Objective-C, I mean, for iOS. And then you might have like whatever, like a JavaScript, library for web apps or something. And then, so you just like bundle that library into your application, and then you guys have your own web service API that the developers can then call that web service API, and it like pushes messages to the client side. And then I guess the client side just returns just a regular old HTTP request back to the server, or do you route the response back from the client to the server?
Yeah, so we provide feedback on either side of the API. So it is seamless from that perspective. It's yeah, that's how it works. I was actually going to brag for a second. The message bus is so fast that often before you receive a response on our server that we've sent a message, the device has already received the message.
So you mean from the HTTP response on the API?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's so funny, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what about like WebSockets these days? Like, is that like, I mean, WebSockets isn't a company, it's like a protocol, but is like WebSockets a threat to your business, or is like what is how do you think about WebSockets?
We love WebSockets. It's fantastic that there's an industry standard that is exactly aligned with our market, which is amazing. And it goes, there's multiple protocols, right? So we've got MQTT, there's gRPC, HB2 has a built-in push mechanism. We've got Web Transport, which is a newer protocol that supports quick with reliable and lossy patterns. So it's easier to do binary data streams and things like that, that you can lose some of the packets, right? If you're doing video streaming, things like that. So there's a lot in the industry today on how devices communicate. There's protocols built for this. And it's fantastic because that means, there's a lot of demand and a huge opportunity, because those protocols, they're not all that simple. Kind of like we were describing how security access in GCP, there's like 2,000 permissions. Well, it's the same when you're dealing with these protocols, because there's all these edge cases. We'll drop a message, or what happens if the message is sent before I get connected? What happens if I'm offline for 2 days? Do I get store and forward? There's just so much that goes into it.
So you guys are basically just using WebSockets to help make your product development from like the back end perspective more seamless, and then you are basically building like kind of how like AWS abstracted away servers and network management and added like like a console and sort of like a semi-developer friendly environment to to work in. You guys are doing that, but for like bi-directional message pushing.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's
cool.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you were talking about scale earlier. I really have to ask, when you got this Twitter Spaces launch, I think they did like the official launch with DeSantis. He did his
I heard about that.
he did his like announcement or whatever that he's running for president, and he did it on Twitter Spaces like right after they launched the Twitter Spaces feature. And I think it got to like 1 million concurrent users or something, and like the whole thing crashed and it was like falling apart, and like people were getting kicked off. Like, were you guys just all like laughing? You're like, you did the 25 million with the cricket match, and then this thing's falling apart at 1 million. Were you guys all just kind of like sitting back and laughing at that sequence of events?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, exactly. I was wondering what we should probably do a little retrospective with that on the team, because just kind of looking at that, it was only 1 million and they cracked. That's, our day-to-day is that we're well beyond that. And you guess what? They're pushing video, right? So streaming video, that's a big part of it.
Yeah. Okay.
Akamai, they solved that a long time ago. And, the just video streaming, it's pretty straightforward. And it's not, I don't know, it's like Zoom, like what we're doing right now. We are probably exchanging UDP packets back and forth through a streaming mechanism. When you're doing it in a large broadcast scenario, you're not actually getting a live feed. You're getting compressed chunks of files, usually in 2 to 5 second worth of video chunks. So your client will download those chunks and buffer for that amount of time. So you're always behind. And often it's at 40 seconds worth of latency on some of those live streams. You can get a lot closer. But yeah, so do you know where it failed? Like what part of the infrastructure failed?
I have no idea. I was actually just curious if you knew, like, if they rolled their own like streaming platform, or I don't know any of the details. I just know kind of like the high level that it crashed, and it was I think they had to restart and move it to a different account or something, or obviously it probably didn't look good to all involved. I'm sure, Musk might have been embarrassed, and DeSantis might have been embarrassed. I think David Sachs from the All In podcast was involved in that too. So it was probably, a little bit of egg on everybody's face. But I was just, curious, like, for something like that scale, I mean, that 1 million concurrent users, I guess video streaming is a different beast, but it seems like a low bar these days.
It is low bar. Everyone's doing it. Even LinkedIn is doing it. No, LinkedIn is going to become a live streaming platform company, which is crazy. Yeah,
I saw that.
Yeah, so do you remember Periscope?
Yeah.
Twitter acquired Periscope, and the team is actually responsible for the Spaces, the Twitter Spaces, right? So I'm guessing.
The Periscope team is responsible for Spaces.
I'm looking into that just because Kayvon, the CEO of Periscope, was 100% focused on Spaces, right? And so I'm assuming that's where a lot of that tech, and Twitter Periscope, they use PubNub when they were launching, right? And this is actually a good story that we should walk through. When they actually ran into an issue, and they said, "Hey, we're not able to pull some messages from history. We're using our iOS SDK." And so we're like, "Hey, okay, they're only like, maybe 5 blocks away from us. Why don't we go over and walk over to the office in person and actually visit them on site? Just, to do good customer service. Might as well solve their issue immediately." So we walk in, and they still hadn't really super launched yet. We didn't know who they were. It was just like another customer at PubNub. We walk in, and everyone has one or two phones at their desk that are all have like these live feeds on them. You're like, and then there's different people on those calls that are actually talking. It's like, wait, that person looks familiar. Wait, isn't that Aaron Paul? And they're like, yeah, that's Aaron Paul. And we're like, is that live right now? Yeah, that's him. He's live talking right now on Paris. I'm like, what? We had no idea what this startup was doing, in near downtown Soma of San Francisco. So we go in, we help them, we solve their problem, and off they go. And they were doing huge. They could have, they could have just kept going. They could have done what TikTok did, right? They could have replaced what Vine did, what TikTok did. They could have been the app, but sort of Twitter sort of absorbed them, and they decided to kill both Vine and Periscope, which is a huge mistake because that left a whole gap in the market. So now you've got TikTok, which took over, and Instagram's trying to catch up. So it's a part of the story. I think a huge part of the story of why they failed and why they stopped is because they tried to, take a lot of that tech and build it in-house. So we provided this infrastructure that scaled to the moon, and they decided, okay, instead of building more products and features and capabilities into the platform, we're just going to rewrite some of the code internally, right? So what that did is that it hampered them from going further. They couldn't add more features because they were busy doing a rewrite that they didn't need to do. And so they're actually trying to take out they were trying to take out PubNub too. They're trying to take us out. And so they flipped off the switch. We saw their traffic drop, and we're like, oh, well, there goes Periscope. But then like 10 minutes later, it all came back because their system crashed and burned, and they had to flip back over. So they did that for another 6 months. They flipped off, flipped back on, flipped off. They eventually got it right, but guess what? 6 months is too long to stay.
Yeah, how much time did you spend like spinning your wheels when there's tech out there? It's like why build a data center anymore? Who builds data centers? So it's like the same concept. I have my CEO coach, Mike Krupit. He was the CEO at CD Now. I don't know if you remember CD Now, but it was like the first e-commerce store that sold CDs. I think eventually it got bought by they were in the 90s. They were in the .com boom. They got bought by some private equity that then sold it to Amazon, and then it became Amazon eventually. But he was telling me like, they raised like, I don't know, tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars to basically build like a web server environment and build an e-commerce website. They had like 300 engineers, and like basically the 300 engineers were racking servers, installing Linux, configuring Cisco switches, writing HTML and like PHP code or whatever they were using, probably C or something like that back then. And yeah, man, like now you can just get Shopify.
Yep. You just click a button. That's what is this. Make it easy, make it a good price. And there you go. That's where you can make money. It's just making those business processes easy.
Yeah. So that it reinventing the wheel. We talked about the building too much before you release. Reinventing the wheel. I think that's another mistake I've seen made a lot.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting about the Periscope. I also going back to the Silicon Valley HBO reference. I think there was a joke in there that was related to Periscope too, because I think Periscope, another reason they failed, I think, was because there were so many like dick pics going around on their platform, and then like people would log in, and then you'd get like, I forget what they called it, but it was like, you'd just be like checking some feed out, and all of a sudden someone would like, throw their dick on the screen and then like just log out real fast. So that whole thing, the hot dog app that Jin Yang built, he built the image recognition software.
Yeah.
And then like, the Erlich Bachman was like, oh, this is so awesome. And he went to go sell it, and it like only could identify a hot dog or not a hot dog. And then the private equity firm or whatever like bought it because Periscope needed it to like stop the dick pic problem. So that was the joke. I think they were making a dig at Periscope on that one.
Yeah, that it's absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I gotta that's a show that's worth rewatching. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's funny, man. Like I have a lot of friends. I love it. I personally enjoy watching it, but I have a lot of friends who are like, startup founders, serial founders, and they're like, I can't watch it. It gives me too much anxiety because it's like
It
too
did,
real.
yeah. It was really real. They got it spot on. They really did. They also had the guy, what was this? I can't remember his name. One of the main characters that would always just try to throw up constantly because he was way too panicked about
Yeah,
whatever. 'Cause
Richard. Yeah, the
stress is
CEO.
Yep, Richard. Yep. Yeah, stress is really high. Yeah.
So I've seen both Erlich Bachman, I forget his real name in real life, and I've seen him and Jin Yang. I forget Jin Yang's real name in real life, but I've seen both of them live at stand-up comedy shows, like outside of the Silicon Valley HBO thing. They're both funny.
That's
I was
awesome.
supposed to see Erlich Bachman. I can't remember his name right now. I was supposed to see him again in a different show, and the show got canceled because he called in a bomb threat on a Amtrak in New Jersey.
No.
I was like,
Oh,
dude,
that's
how stupid do you got to be, man?
Oh, dang.
I don't know. He must have had something going on, but
Oh, wait, that was him? Or was it just some patron that?
no, in real life, like the guy who plays the Erlich Bachman character, like the
No
actor,
way.
that
Wait.
dude called in a bomb threat on an Amtrak train in New
Okay,
Jersey.
yeah. That's not a good idea. No,
Yeah.
dang.
But yeah, man. So let's go to we were talking about San Francisco. I'm actually coming out. I'm going to be in Tenderloin in a few weeks. But it's been a while. So the last time I was in San Francisco was pre-pandemic. You live downtown, right?
That's right, yes.
Yeah. So what is like? I keep hearing about San Francisco. Like, what is it like? Is it the news has you believe that it's like a ghost town and it's like terrible and there's like crime everywhere and it's don't go there. And I mean, I live in Philly, so I see, I live right in Center City, Philadelphia, so I see like that stuff often. But
Yep.
I'm curious what it's like these days in San Francisco.
Well, it is true. Grocery shopping is now free. It's a victimless crime, right? So just walk in and walk out, and there's no resistance.
Wow.
It's super common, and it's
That's like
not
the government is just basically saying like victimless crimes, just ignore them, just let them happen. So the businesses are suffering, the local businesses.
Yeah, that's what a Whole Foods opened up a few blocks away from where I live. I'm like, hooray, that's awesome. I have a nearby grocery store that's, at least it's, because Soma is mostly industrial and businesses, and that's where I live. And so it's nice to have some residential type amenities, but they closed it down saying, no one was paying for the groceries. So which is a problem, right? So
Yeah.
and it is a ghost town here in San Francisco. The majority of all the office buildings were all desk jobs, which can be work from home. And after we have a regression to the mean, right, which is about 6 months for humans, when something changes, and it's usually a big change, right? It affects you, and you want to go back to the normal. But if you're stuck down in that despair for a lot longer, after 6 months, it becomes the new normal for a human. And so we got used to working from home. Nobody wants to come back. And this is what happened with San Francisco. So all of the towers in the city, they're empty. What are we going to do with all the empty towers? And you heard that, what is it? The vacancy rate for office space leasing is in the range of 50% vacancy, but it's worse because they're only counting the non-filled leases. There are still a lot of leases that they're including, but are still empty office spaces. So as soon as those leases expire, we're going to see 70+% vacancy.
I don't know what tower it is, but it's one of the main towers in Somo. Sold in like 2017 or 18 for 300 some million. And it just traded again at like 60 or 70 million.
That's a great price discount.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's basically all these like, it's like a private equity firms are buying these towers now to take them off the books of the banks and the real estate investments like the REITs and all these things. They're taking these towers off the books of those companies, like, just so they can take the asset off their books. And and then they're buying them like super cheap. And I think these like PEs or whatever are betting that, the market's going to come back in 10 years. We're going to be back to like 2019 again. Everything's going to be crazy booming. Who knows if it's going to happen? I mean, it definitely seems like, Silicon Valley is dispersed. And I guess by, kind of by extension, San Francisco tech is kind of dispersed. And, now you've got people working from like Lake Tahoe and Boise and,
Yeah.
Austin and all these other places.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. That's what we saw as well at PubNub when we kind of closed the doors. We were like, okay, we're also gonna close our office. No point in paying for it if we're not going to be there. And most of our team moved away. So even if we were to say, launch a new office here, there's no one to go to it. So
Where'd they move?
Portland, south here in California, just move south, or most people move south.
Okay.
So it's
just cheaper, and I guess you don't have to worry about the state of the city. I'm curious, like, what do you think about like what it's to me it's weird what the San Francisco government is doing, the municipal government there, like with crime. But what do you think about it, like as a resident?
They are currently buying, so the city of San Francisco is buying some buildings, specifically to give the unhoused houses. And there's a lot of folks who don't want that because you're going to have
they're buying buildings downtown.
Yeah, all over the city.
Like what neighborhoods? Like Tenderloin or Somo or.
Yep, every single neighborhood that there's a building that's available, they have so much cash on hand that they are trying to buy these buildings because there is a lot of there's a lot of homeless, right? There's a lot of people that are on the streets, and they see one option with their cash reserves is to actually buy homes for these people. And I'm okay with that. I think that's fine. I think we could do all of that. We actually get to the point where I think this would be really cool. And in Star Trek, right? There's no money in Star Trek, right? It's a society free of money. There is, which is really weird. I've watched Star Trek for many years, and I didn't notice that until after I was out of college. I'm like, why did it take me so long to realize that Star Trek it's because they have replicators, right? Once you have a replicator technology, a replicator can replicate a replicator. And so you have an unlimited amount of replication capability. You can food and clothes and buildings. We don't have that yet, but we can try to get closer to this and provide the ability for people to have these kinds of lives where they don't have to work, right? They could just choose to do what they want. And, we have infrastructure set up because we have such abundance to be able to afford to have some people of our society start living like that.
Literally had the exact same conversation with a friend of mine about the replicators. I think I always referred to them as materializers or something, but I don't know the Star Trek terminology. But I've had that exact same conversation about the Star Trek example. And I guess I'm not a huge like Star Trek watcher, so I don't know all the details. But I think they in lieu of fiscal currency, like currency was becoming like reputation, like your reputation as a person. Because everything was available. Like you could just anything you needed, you could just like get it.
Yeah, it's all exactly. Reputation and the merits that you have along the way, and what you achieve, that becomes the currency. And the ultimate question comes in like, hey, once you get to the Elon Musk level of wealth, what do you do? Well, you can see what he's doing now. Like he could just retire for the rest of his life, for 1 million lives. He never has to work again. But you get to the point where, you want to keep pushing forward. You want to keep pursuing. And it's not about money anymore at that point.
I think it's not about money like a really long time before you get to Elon Musk's level.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
You have to be like, to do that, like to win in business that at that scale, like whether you're Elon Musk or whether you're Bill Gates or any of these, Zuck, like any of these like epic, founders, I think you have to, there's a lot of traits, but, some of it's luck. some of it's like just sheer intelligence, some of it's like raw cognitive ability, memory, some of it's like just like this brute force intensity that you can push through like literally any problem. Like no problem is an obstacle that stops those types of people. Like they're just like they brute force through every problem. And I think they also have to have like some weird like screw loose that like they're just obsessed. Like they have to keep building. Like they have to keep building and like building more and then building more, and like they can't stop. Like it's like a compulsion.
Yeah. It's the way I see it is you spend, a decade plus honing these skills that you've become really good at, and you want to keep doing it, right? Even if you're in a sport and you're really good and you keep getting better and you've achieved this skill set, it doesn't make sense to just kick back afterwards and not use that skill anymore. It's something you want to continue to use and leverage, and something you've learned over the years because you got good at it. I think that's what drives at least those folks. You just want to keep at it. Like there's no point in just saying you finally got good at it. Like give up now? No, I think you just keep pushing forward.
Yeah. Back to San Francisco, because I don't think we closed the loop on that. So why do you still live there if it's like it's got all these challenges? What keeps you there? I'm curious.
My co-founder and I still live here, so that's a big part of it. I am looking at Seattle because that's where I came from before here. So
okay, cool.
Seattle's looking pretty good right now. Taking a look up there every now and then, but some of our exec team is still here, so in the San Francisco area.
So just to have like those in-persons basically, but like you don't really enjoy living there anymore, or?
Yeah, it's a good question. For me, I don't think I would have much of a difference of opinion where I lived.
Yeah, you're just kind of like doing your thing and just working away at what you got going on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I totally feel that. I love living in cities. I love Philly because it's walkable and all my friends are here. So like, I don't think, I don't really want to leave Philly, but it's sad, man. To think about like San Francisco, I guess like the Silicon Valley area is probably not as impacted as San Francisco. I think, there's probably still like pretty good tech centralization happening in Silicon Valley, but even there, I mean, it's not what it used to be. It's, it's like a shadow of its former self at this point. And it's kind of sad to see, that I guess COVID kind of was the death nail, but it's sad to see that whole region isn't, anywhere near as booming as it used to be.
Yeah. It's walking the streets, it's empty. I remember the days when it was so crowded that you couldn't see to the next block. But now you can see all the way to the end, as far as I can see in the streets. They closed down the mall here in San Francisco. So it's just many businesses are just closing because there's no foot traffic. There's no reason to come to the city. So what do they get? What do we do? What's the next step? What do we do? We have to turn it into residents. That's the only thing I can think of. Just make it attractive for residents, but there's problems to solve before that can happen.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, Philly has some of the same challenges. It's definitely gotten it's got worse, and then it got a little better after COVID. I'd say it's like, as far as like people being out, it's about the same as it was before COVID. Like people going out and doing things and restaurants being open. It's it's back, but the crime still seems higher. I don't know. I'm hearing more about it. But I mean, I also like, if you watch the news, like you're going to think that you walk outside of your door and you're instantly shot. But
yeah,
I've never actually seen a shooting, but I hear about them a lot. So I don't know. I guess time will tell. But I generally feel safe, but I'm also a 6'8" guy, and my wife who's
6'8".
My wife who's a 5'8" or whatever she is, or 5'6". I think she's 5'6". She says sometimes walking alone, it's definitely like certain blocks, or even in our neighborhood, certain blocks. We live in like the nicest neighborhood in Philly. In certain blocks, she's like, yeah, I don't like walking around there.
Oh, Oh yeah, that's not good to have a feeling of that kind of fear.
Yeah. So, all right, man. I think we're getting to a good closing here. Anything else you want to hit on that I didn't hit on here?
Let's see. We talked about the product, quick development, and rapid cycles. We didn't talk a whole lot about businessy aspects of it. We kind of touched on some of those things, but like thinking, why start a business? Why go into it?
Yeah. What was your why?
So I could just play video games all day. Because if the business was just over there on the side doing its thing, I could just sit back and turn on the TV and play some video games.
Oh yeah, businesses they just run on autopilot, man.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have to do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I made that's not how they work. The more success, the more work. So,
but like I think the ultimate trick, if you can I was thinking about this the other day because my wife was playing the new Zelda Tears of the Kingdom.
Nice.
And I was sitting on the couch on my laptop, like writing an ERD. And so I was thinking this is kind of like my form of a video game right now. I'm sitting here like writing, data relationships and mapping out table structures. So that I was thinking about that in my head. It's like, business is like my like the game I play.
It's a lot of fun. It's doing business once you've had that experience over the years and being able to continue to work on that. There is a puzzle every time, and being able to solve those problems is very rewarding, and even more rewarding than you can get from a video game because there's some real world impacts there.
You can go spend the points that you get somewhere.
Yeah, you still the video game you can spend points. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean like business. Yeah, you can go. You can go spend the points you win.
That's right. Oh yeah. Okay. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. You do. Yep. There's a lot of points out there that are available for the taking and having.
But yeah, man. Thanks for coming on. This was an awesome time.
Cash flow? Did you clear your cash flow?